we will be starting out today's session. So hello everyone, a very warm welcome to everyone for this session, and I'm super excited to have you all here, excited about all the amazing conversations that we are going to have today. And it is the 10th virtual club meeting for Innovation Curious Innovators. And today's topic is about pollution and disease. So this topic, pollution, it is always reverberating in our mind. And today we will be knowing about the detrimental effects it has on our health as well on the surroundings. So without further delay, we will be starting our today's session by inviting retired Surgeon Rear Admiral Dr. V.K. Singh Sir, who is the Managing Director of Innovatio Curious. He is a visionary and an amazing persona, and it will be a privilege to have you, sir. And sir will be talking about the various medical aspects that arise due to pollution. Over to you, sir.
As Dr. Dablina has already introduced the topic and me, I would like to introduce and sensitize with the topic, and rest, of course, the panelist and the moderator would do the needful. It is the pollution and disease have been always been in the news every winter, and I was just reading some of the data which is available, which have been done recently. 1.7 million, that is 18% of all deaths, are due to pollution in India. Delhi is the worst polluted city of India, followed by, Dr. Devlina may not like, followed by Kolkata, then Bombay and Chennai. So these are but I'm staying in a place with the most polluted. Now, every winter for last 5-6 years, I hear there's a noise, but how much political will is there to really tackle the pollution? That is a big question mark. Cases go to the Supreme Court, PIL go to Supreme Court, and ultimately same issues come. Stop burning, stop construction, vehicle pollution at the law, but there are rules, there are regulations, but nothing much is done because human life, probably in our country, is one thing is not taken much note of. It is one thing we would like that all these pollutions, climatic changes, everything lead into diseases, and all the diseases and ultimately the mortality and morbidity increases. Today's panelists are a very balanced one. There's somebody talking on the soil or on the ground, river, Yash is talking, and also the Dablina is talking on the water, air pollution, and the doctor, our friend from IHMR, he is talking of the diseases and the pollution. Well, today there was a very there's a doctor, there is something which has appeared, but they have been appearing in the past, how blindly we follow certain norms. The generator sets, which is making in Faridabad, Hindustan syringes, have been doing the pollution as it is against the court order. So they have stopped it with the result. Syringes will not come up in the market and the vaccination will be affected. So it is very knee-jerk reactions we have been doing it on the pollution front, and no proper method has been taken. If you really see, glaciers are melting, so the dengue and chikungunya increases, and that is melting because of the various kinds of climatic changes, which also leads to the pollution. The pattern of the disease has been that the people were dying because of bacterial infection, and now it is all coming up in the viral infection. And many scientists are saying it is all due to pollution. It has been because we are not taking it. Is a man-made disaster, and it is going to take the lot of morbidity and mortality in the cases. And the most polluted places, as I have said, is the Delhi and around. And today's Times of India gave one full page paper and a page advertisement that one side lung is affected, that is Delhi, another side lung is not affected, that is in the hills. So go and settle down in the hills. Well, is it possible? But that is what it is. Last point I would like to mention that the quality of life and quality of life index is the one which is also have been talking very badly against India for pollution level. I was posted in Leh and the Indus River got polluted because our soldiers got inducted on Siachen Glacier. And I had also written number of such at that time that this is going to cause a problem. So when glacier during summer melted, Indus River was polluted because of the there was no disposal of the feces or morning soil. And ultimately, this led into Indus River and the Leh got number of cases of jaundice, hepatitis, because the contaminated water is due to the feces, and it was made a hue and cry at that time. So we always make hue and cry when things happen. It is something unfortunate. And then everybody started talking of chemical incineration, how to burn it and how to do it. And now, of course, is under control after so many years. So do we have to wait for such a pollution? It is something which is really have to be seen. Do we have to wait and when the media comes up or PIL come in Supreme Court, or can we do something better? And I hope the whole attention all the panelists will draw, and we citizens and people will get aware that this is something we should do, and polity and also executives will take that something need to be done. Thank you very much. I now hand over to Dr. Dabelina, who is an expert in the water. And she is already, her one book is in the last phase, is being published by the US publisher. And she is the one who will take you to the complete, the panel discussions. Thank you very much to give me the opportunity, Dr. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that wonderful enlightenment of the speech. So, and we get to know about a lot of things pertaining to the glaciers, pertaining to the problems that we are having due to the fecal disposition and not proper maintaining of the glaciers. So invariably, this will be having an health hazards in the long run. So without further ado, we will be taking this session a bit further, and I will be introducing everyone. So starting with Dr. Sunil Kumar. So Dr. Sunil Kumar is a senior principal scientist of CSIR NIRI. So he has 20 years of experience in the field of and solid waste management, and he has 300 publications under his name, and he has 5 books and 40 book chapters and numerous projects that is undertaken by government, private, as well as international bodies. So apart from the national and the international accolades, Dr. Sunil Kumar has been awarded as an outstanding scientist in 2011 and 2016 at CSIR NIRI for his scientific excellence in the field of solid waste management. So next person in our panel is Mr. Yash Dadwadia. So we will be I will be introducing everyone, and then we will start our sessions. So Mr. Yashwant Dadwadia, who is a professional for more than 3 decades and has an experience in varied phases of corporate and government communication, license, and business delivery in international trades, in technology and knowledge transfers and public-private partnership. So currently he is the area director of River Recycle OY Limited, Finland. Then the next person we will be listening to is Dr. Amit Bhatnagar, an IITian turned social entrepreneur, and a founder of Acaster Technologies Private Limited. His company addresses the healthcare problems pertaining to diagnostics and preventive healthcare services. So warm welcome to you, sir. And further, Dr. Nitish Dogra is a faculty of IIHMR Delhi. He is an alumni of Johns Hopkins, US. He has edited a book for climate change and disease dynamics in India. He has worked with Johns Hopkins University alumni along with Fulbrighters as well as US Embassy in India physicians to create awareness of air pollution, personal exposures in Delhi. So we will be taking forward with the first person in our session, Dr. Sunil Kumar. Welcome you, sir, to the session.
Thanks to the organizer for giving me opportunity to talk about pollution and diseases. Modernization and progresses have a number of drawbacks, and one of which is pollution that is producing on the planet, particularly on land, the air, and in the water. The amount of waste generated every day by each home has increased manyfold as the world population has grown, and particularly due to the demand for food and other necessities. This material is eventually deposited into municipal waste collection centers where it is collected by local municipalities before it is being disposed of. However, not all these trashes are collected and delivered to the final dump sites, particularly due to lack of resources or inadequate infrastructure. If the management is done incorrectly at this stage, it can have major health consequences, causing various negative externalities in the environment. There are a lot of impacts of solid waste on health. Population in locations where there is no suitable waste collection disposal procedure, especially particularly preschool children, employees, rake pickers, workers in facilities manufacturing poisonous and infectious material are among those who are at danger, particularly due to improper solid waste disposal facilities. Other high risk populations include those who live near a trash dump, those whose water supply has been affected due to waste dumping or leakage from disposal sites. Hazardous waste exposure can have a negative impact on human health, particularly children being exposed to these contaminants. Chemical poisoning is caused by the release of chemical waste into the environment, and direct exposure can lead to diseases through chemical exposure. Many research has been conducted in different parts of the world to determine if there is a link between health and hazardous waste. Hospital and other medical waste disposal require special attention because it might pose serious health risks. Discarded syringes, needles, bandages, plasters, and other contagious waste from hospital, healthcare centers, medical laboratories, and research centers are frequently throwing out alongside regular non-infected waste. Coming to the treatment processes, waste treatment and disposal facility can potentially pose a health risk to the surrounding community. Inefficiently run incineration plants pollute the air, and poorly managed and built landfills attract a variety of disease carrying insects and rodents. And these places should ideally be situated at a safer distance from any human settlement. Landfill sites should be properly lined and surrounded to prevent leakage into local groundwater sources. If necessary safeguards are not taken, recycling can also be hazardous to one's health. Toxic exposure is a risk for those who work with garbage containing chemicals and metals. Disposal of healthcare wastes require special attention because wounds created by discarded syringes can spread diseases like hepatitis B and C, chikungunya, etc. Rag pickers and anyone scavenging in rubbish dumps for recyclable items may be injured or come into close contact with the infectious wastes, and hence special care is required to be taken handling those things. And there are also occupational health hazards with the handling of waste, like infections, chronic diseases, accidents. These took place while handling waste improperly. The role of plastics is also associated with this unsanitary use and disposal of plastics, as well as the consequences for human health have become a source of worry. Colored plastics are hazardous because their color contains highly poisonous heavy metals. Copper, lead, chromium, cobalt, selenium, and cadmium are some of the hazardous materials which are in the plastics. And colored plastics have been outlawed in majority of the industrialized countries. India also, particularly the state of Himachal Pradesh and Ladakh districts, have outlawed the use of plastics, and other states should follow in their footsteps. Exposure assessment. Some studies have indicated that a link is established between living near legal landfills and a variety of health hazards. Although the evidence is inconclusive, the quality of the exposure assessment, among other things, is a factor in the observation's weakness. The distance from the landfill is utilized as a proxy for exposure in the majority of the studies. It has been highlighted that this metric may reflect and combine many exposure routes, particularly not only air but also the contamination of soil or groundwater in the vicinity of the said plants. Health effects. There are many articles which have clearly indicated that there are potential health implications while living nearby dump sites. Systematic reviews have summarized these findings. They mostly concern about cancer and birth outcomes, while respiratory disorders and irritation have lately been studied. Different sites and non-Hodgkin lymphoma have been linked to an increased risk of particularly cancer, although the evidence is insufficient to draw definite conclusions. Coming to the hazardous and toxic waste. Hazardous and toxic waste, these illegal practices of urban and hazardous waste disposal will continue to affect some local communities in industrialized countries. They are becoming more prevalent, particularly in middle low income countries. The latter due to illegal transboundary trade from industrialized countries. Several studies have reported about a broader range of health concern for people living in the vicinity of those regions. This has been well represented by many research findings. There are many research publications in India also which proved this which corroborates these findings. Now coming to the emerging priorities, particularly electronic waste, which is a solid waste stream with more than 40 million tons of heat waste which is produced each year around the globe. The management and disposal of this type of garbage is very difficult, which is frequently linked to illegal e-waste trade, particularly to the underdeveloped countries. And this e-waste contains varieties of different substances, including heavy metals, pH, polychlorinated biphenyls, brominated flame retardants. This creates a lot of problem, particularly with lung function, adverse birth outcomes, DNA damage, and chromosomal. These aberrations in lymphocytes were also reported in some of the latest literatures. Appropriate epidemiological research in vulnerable communities is required to be conducted to address these relatively new and expanding areas of concern. Now, the points for discussion is about waste generation, its proper collection, transport and segregation, as well as management and disposal, and this entails a variety of complex activity which has this potential impact on health both directly and indirectly through variety of pathways and mechanisms that are only partially understood. The health impacts include an increased risk of cancer and mortality, as well as respiratory disorders and low birth weights. Modern technologies have substantially reduced harmful emissions and the health effects which can be measured and which will have decreased in many cases along with the time. Overall, time series analysis, DNA and population cohorts would be the best option for elucidating these temporal tendencies. However, many countries still have old generation facilities and health effects similar to those which are described particularly in literature are expected to occur in addition to the nature of the waste flows which are changing. Overall, the data is still inconclusive and further more studies are required to be conducted to increase the evidence basis needed to generate effective policy recommendation to curb the menace of this inappropriate waste collection, this and all the other chains of its management aspects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the input that you have given pertaining to the solid waste management and pertaining to the soil pollution that we are having right now and the management problems pertaining to the solid waste that is being disposed of without a proper segregation. So now forging ahead with our second panelist, our second person in the for river pollutions, we will be inviting Mr. Yashwant Dadwadia. So he is the area director of India and Bangladesh Rivers Recycle OY Finland. So welcome you, sir, for the session.
Thanks, Devlina. First and foremost, my sincere thanks to Dr. Saab and my dear friend Sachin for giving me this opportunity to share my knowledge about the river plastic pollution. So, I will not give you much dynamics or data on that, but I would like to share that, almost 12 million metric ton plastic reaches oceans every year. And the plastic is the largest component affecting the marine life. So I just give you background about, river recycle. River recycle is basically, a concept designed by our founder and CEO, Mr. Anssi Mikola. And we realized that, plastic is one of the component, and the river is the most efficient transporter for this plastic getting into the oceans. So what concept we have designed is that we collect the plastic waste from the rivers, we segregate this at the site, and then we send it for the respective recycling process, mechanically and chemically recycling. So, and then along the side, what we do is we try to create some awareness in the people living around the river area. Just tell them the ill effects of the poor waste management. Then we, train them how to do the segregation at the source. Because in waste management, segregation at the source is the real challenge actually. So that is causing, the most of the challenges for the people into the waste management. And then we train them and bring them to our site and, show them how to send it for the processes. And then we create a value out of this plastic waste through chemically recycling. So what I would like to share here is that, when we talk about the public-private partnership, we normally think that, from public side, there's a government entity, which is a PSU or some, governing authority on the rivers, or maybe the municipal corporations. But we forget that it has to be people-centric. So the moment we think that it has to be for the people and by the people, then, there's an impact we can think about. So that is the whole idea we developed during this river cleaning process. And I give you a small statistic. My fellow panelists will talk about the water-borne diseases and other things. 297,000 children died due to poor sanitation and hygiene system. And if I've gone through the NEERI report when we were doing the due diligence on Methi River in Mumbai. We are doing this project with MMRDA, and it is funded by Huhtamaki. And United Nations Technology Innovation Lab is another partner. VTT Research from Finland is another partner. And when we were going through the NEERI report, but there is not much research done on the river plastic. So, what happens that we need to come out with more and more research, study on the river plastic, so that we can, design the solutions accordingly. Third, another important thing is that what normally happens that whenever we have any initiative, till the time you put in money, that concept or that initiative will remain alive. But the moment you withdraw the money, it collapsed. So we have come out with a solution which is a sustainable solution, so that we can keep continuing cleaning the river. So that is all about river recycle. And I would love to have the questions from the audience and the fellow panelists on that. Thank you, Devlina.
Thank you, sir. So we will be moving ahead with the next one.
Yeah, and I think maybe if I take the liberty, Dr. Devlina, to introduce you, because you are the next expert who is going to share insights. So just that everybody knows that, of course, Dr. Devlina has been supporting the work of healthcare innovation, I think already for a long period. And as far as I know, for last 5-6 years, she has been also supporting Innovation Curious. So she comes with a research background in this topic in environmental sciences. And I think by and large, she has a lot of expertise in also scouting innovation and, interfacing with a lot of other researchers. So over to you, Dr. Devlina, for sharing your knowledge on this platform today.
Thank you so much, Sachin. It was really thanks for such a wonderful introduction. So taking ahead with this, when we are talking about water pollution, so we know that 70% of our earth is having water, and only 3% of that 70%, of that 100% is for fresh water. So this is also, we know that only 3% for drinking purpose, for bathing purpose, for irrigation purpose. So 3% water we have for irrigation, for drinking, and for bathing. That is for our daily use. So we are contaminating that 3% apart from the, because we never think that water will be lesser or something like that. So what are the prime causes for your water pollution, and what are the prime reasons for your water pollution? So the first reason is unethical farming practices that is being done. Second, pertaining to the illegal disposal of wastewater, that is industrial wastewater, to be more precise. And the third, that is pertaining to the population growth and the demand for fresh water. And the fourth, we have the microplastics that just now sir has said. Pertaining to that, we will be talking further. So what comes to our mind when we are talking about pollution? It is something that has a harmful effect on the health, on the environment, and our surroundings. So according to the recent data that we have seen, that 2/3 of our water is frozen in glaciers, and that we are not using. That 2/3 we are not using. And 1.1 billion people worldwide, they lack the access to a clean water, clean drinking water. And a total of 2.7 billion, they find water scarcity. So, and inadequate sanitation, as well as 2.4 billion people around the world are exposed to diseases such as cholera and typhoid. So in the recent study, we have seen that 2 million people, mostly children, died each year due to your diarrheal diseases alone. So this data, it is really something that we should be concerned about. And since we are using water invariably for everything, we are using even the wastewater that we are disposing of. To clear that wastewater, we need a fresh water. So according to the recent data, that is, we have seen that the thick foamy layer of Panchganga River near Rajaram Barrage has sparked a concern for the people of Kolhapur district. So it has shown concerns of water pollution. Several efforts are being made to clean up that water pollution. And the Kolhapur Jila Parishad, they have put a check on Panchganga by making a sewage treatment plant nearby to the river. But it is still an ongoing process and it will take time to clear that one. There is another study I want to come up with that is pertaining to the one fruit that we are very excited as a superfood, that is your avocado. Nowadays, people are going, there is a hype over having this food, but rarely do we know that this food, this particular superfood that we are talking about, it has all the minerals that they said. They have, the recent data has said that avocado has all the minerals and it is very good for health. But the dark side, it consumes a huge amount of water. Avocado farming is a water intensive activity. In some parts of the world, particularly in Chile, the Pretoria province is facing problems because it requires 320 liters per avocado. That is 64 times more than a simple tomato vegetation that is being grown. So we know it is a very rich mineral food, but we have raw coconut also. And the raw coconut has your potassium, it has coconut, it has zinc, it has iron, it has magnesium. Apart from that, it has fiber, which is an important for this thing that is for our gut microbiome. So avocado is not having that fiber. So instead of avocado, I will suggest people to go for this raw coconut instead of this. So in California, the farmers face problems because the marketing, the showcasing of avocado as a superfood does not show the dark side of that irrigation of that particular food. Because in California, the avocado tree requires 20 gallons of water during irrigation season. Irrigation season means the season when the farmers have a controlled amounts of water for their irrigation purpose. So that is a default that we have. And nowadays people are not aware that, many of the countries nowadays in India also, in many of the underdeveloped countries, they are going for making this superfood into farming practices. And invariably by 2050, California is, it is said that it will be having your water problems because already so much water has been consumed by this illegal practice of your farming. So apart from that, I will be talking about the recent study of IIT Madras, who has done the study over the Kaveri River. So there in this river, there are lots of your pharmaceutical residual products as well as your personal care products. They are being disposed of. And along with that, there are minuscule particles of plastics that is also being disposed of. So disposed of, even after treatment, it is coming in the water. So their percentage is very higher. Earlier, there was a study of Patincheru in Hyderabad. They are finding that ciprofloxacin level, that is antibiotic that is used for, that is the very higher grade antibiotic that is being used. It is found in the river at 36 milligram per liter. According to the your food, according to our this thing means disposal standards, it should be 0.01 microgram per liter of disposal, and there we are disposing 39 milligram per liter. So that is huge amount, and the people who are staying in that area, in that locality, they are facing all the consequences, all the problems, all the health diseases that they are having. The child that is born out there in that area, they are facing a lot of problems. So a Swedish scientist came and he just tested this water, just a surface water, and they found that this much amount of higher level of your antibiotic is still there in the water. not just ciprofloxacin, it is also norfloxacin, moxifloxacin, all the antibiotics that is there. So apart from this, in the study, we have seen that a norflox takes a lot of 6 months to clear off from your system. So when we are prescribing this antibiotics, nowadays doctors are going for probiotics also. They are prescribing probiotics to help the gut microbiome to dispose of this, to clear off or dispose of this antibiotic from our system. So apart from that, there are so many reasons for this water pollution. And one reason is your microplastics that just now sir has discussed about it. So there is a lake in Mongolia. It is an underdeveloped country. So it is heavily polluted, and the lake's name is Havaskol. And it is a highly polluted lake. And this lake is very small compared to Lake Superior of North America, but the pollution level is much, much, much higher. And this pollution, it has occurred due to the microplastic that is coming. And invariably, this microplastics, they will be coming out in our food chain also, and it will be harming the next generation. They will be facing lots of problems, not just in microplastics, but all the residual things that we are disposing of in the rivers. So invariably the fish will be having, it will be coming to the human food chain. Every species will be affected by this process. So the current consumption rates that is pertaining to your microplastics that is there. So it would fill 2.7 billion refuse, that is collection trucks, which would wrap the planet around 800 times if the place, if it is taken from place one end to other end. So that much amount of microplastic is being dumped off in our river. And along with that, the microplastic is also leaking, and the leaking microplastic does two significant things. First, we use wastewater in many cases to fertilize and water our fields. This practice is being done by the industrial wastewater treatment plants. They are disposing of the wastewater into the agricultural lands, and we are spreading the microplastic onto the dried lands. So if not released into the agriculture system, the microplastics are being released through the wastewater into our rivers, our ponds, and also the oceans. So invariably, it will be coming into our system, and we will be having the diseases that can't be treated by the antibiotics that is already prevalent in our system. Because if you say that ciprofloxacin or the norfloxacin or the moxifloxacin and the next generation of antibiotics that is coming up, because these antibiotics is already present in our body because of the biomagnification that we are having. So it is a concern for us, for our future generation, that we need to control this pollution either, and also we need to curb this problems also in the near future. So hope this sessions help us to know further about the pollution that we are facing. Thank you, everyone. So I will be asking Dr. Amit Bhatnagar, Managing Director, Acasta Technologies, to take further about and talk further about the air pollution.
Thank you. First of all, thanks, Dr. V.K. Singh, sir, giving me an opportunity to present whatever we have done related to air pollution. So I would like to speak about the air pollution in two particular categories as a challenge. Number one, as a challenge of awareness, even in the most educated community. And it's a psychological war which we have to understand. The ignorance is such a deep level that we have to really step up to bring that awareness, and so that there is a driving among the people, among the citizen itself, to fight the air pollution. So what I have observed is that when we talk about air pollution, people generally talk about that the death because of air pollution is happening just through the respiratory or the lung disorder. I mean, the WHO data says it is only 1/3. 2/3 death happen because of air pollution through heart attack and the brain stroke. But try to understand, the major challenge doesn't lie there. Challenge lies in the psychological ignorance, is that the family the father who has, who lost the life because of heart attack, their family only sees that there is a heart attack. They don't see the air pollution a killer, a murderer behind it, right? The same way, even when it happens a brain stroke, that is the same thing that people get a natural reason that death happened because of the brain stroke. They do not see that invisible killer which is doing the damage. So if we just see it in a manner that if we ask that particular question, which is going to pinch everyone, that if someone comes and try to murder someone's father, what the family will do? So everyone's answer will be that they will do everything to stop it, to fight it. But right now it is actually happening and they are not doing anything about it. The same way is that a child, if anyone's child is smoking a cigarette, will the father allow? And right now, every day, a child is smoking 20 cigarettes a day, and we are not doing anything about it. So there I see that the way we have to present our words, our awareness programs, it has to be pinching one, so that people has to realize that this time they cannot just ignore. They have to do a very, very discreet and very concrete steps in this direction, so that as a conscious society, we are ready to fight it out. Just comparing the consciousness level, that when we talk about London, in London, if AQI level goes from 15 to 60, people get down on the road. They actually start, it becomes a revolution that it has to stop. But in India, where we are talking about 250, 500, 600, and as citizen, we are just keep ignoring it, right? So that is one area where I think so there is a lot of work is required to be done as a, because Dr. VK Singh is a real inspiration for all of us, the way he conducts things. And I see that there is a greater role to be played in this direction, because the level of ignorance out there among the people is so deep. We have to find out innovative ways to engage them, to make sure that they really respond and ready to fight, ready to combat the air pollution. Now, second comes, because when I came to aware about this air pollution and impact, I could clearly believe that if I really believe in nation building, if I really meant to change something for my country, I cannot ignore this problem. I have to work for it, right? And that is where the reason we started innovating how we can technologically address this issue in an effective manner. And somehow, because the commitment was so deep towards the society, towards the social impact, so we were able to bring out something very powerful. So, and the basic concept is very simple, that you have an air purifier where you have a artificial means of mobilizing the air through the filter. But the moment we go out, volume is so huge that we cannot have that many fans or that much electricity to mobilize outside air. But when I look at every moving vehicle, so relatively there's a air which is going back, right? So there is a moving air is available to all of us. We just need to tap into it. And that is where this innovation started growing in. So we had to face a lot of challenges of, so first challenge was again the psychological challenge. The people who owns the car, they are so emotionally attached to it that if you ask them to fit something permanently on the car, nobody will allow that. So our first challenge was to make it a very detachable, retrofitted system, which even a girl, even a accountant, non-technical guy can install it in 30 seconds and they can take it off within 30 seconds. So it's a very simple to attach and detach, so that every citizen become a Shuddh Vayu Rakshak, Shuddh Vayu warrior in a real sense. Because a single car which is going for 40 to 50 kilometers in a day, that can actually goes a 10-story building amount of volume air it can clean a one single car. And there are 50 lakh such vehicles are going on the road, which means we have a massive amount of energy available to us. If we are able to make people citizen aware that yes, they have a capability to fight, and it is a must for them to fight. And not only talking about in the sense of the health, but just Dr. VK Singh mentioned about that how the HMD plant was shut off because of the air pollution thing. So you can see that what kind of economical losses for the country it is incurring too. Not only, when we talk about India, investor doesn't want to visit India during the summer season, during July or June. They want to come during the winter. And now in the winter, the air pollution is so high. They generally avoid to visit Delhi, the NCR area. So somewhere it is impacting our economy in a much deeper manner, which we are not able to recognize. So that is the way I look at it, is that this is the time we have to really step up and make sure that being an educated community where we understand what air pollution is about, we must ensure that we do everything to fight it out, to ensure that India has its innovative ways to address the problem, which the other world country has to follow. Where we have already showcased in the vaccination drive, I think so there is a time where we have to showcase for the other problems also. India has a way, innovative ways to address these problems on ground. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that innovative talk about the air pollution. So now we will go further and invite Dr. Nitish Dogra. So Dr. Nitish is an associate professor in IIHMR, Delhi. So over to you, sir.
Hello. Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. V.K. Singh, Surgeon Rear Admiral V.K. Singh, for this invitation. Sir is our founder director at IIHMR Delhi, and we have very fond memories of his time with us. And he has really built the foundation of our institute and taken it. He's a main person responsible, I would say, for where we are today, because he was the founder director. So having said so, thank you, Deblina, for the invitation, the introduction. I don't want to say much because one, you heard a lot, and also Amitji is as an innovator, he has already brought out something really fascinating. And before that, whatever he was mentioning about the health aspects, that's bang on. So to begin, all I'll say is my own journey, and not too much, but just to put in context. So the first time I actually studied air pollution was year 2000, believe it or not. Before there was, at that time, there was hardly anybody in the country probably looking at this whole issue. And I was doing this as part of my MD thesis. I was doing my MD in physiology at the Patel Chest Institute in Delhi. And my thesis was on how the indoor air pollution affects the health of school-going children from low-income settings. So that was a very important deep dive, very good learning. And from there, I somehow found my way to the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, to Dr. Jonathan Samet, who was the chair of epidemiology and a guru in global tobacco control. After my MPH there, I came back, and after a couple of months working with INCLIN, the International Clinical Epidemiology Network, I joined TERI, where my remit was working on environmental health. So that was the story then. It was still not considered important at that time. But then since I was at TERI, one of the developments was that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which was headed by Dr. Pachauri, that got the Nobel Peace Prize. And so TERI, where Dr. Pachauri was the head, that a lot of work began on how climate change impacts health. And so the better part of 10 years I spent in that area. I started off at IIHMR in 2009. I had finished one small project on climate and health here at TERI. And then when I moved on to IIHMR, when Dr. V.K. Singh was there, he was very encouraging on continuing that work on the impact of climate change on health. Mind you, that was 2009, when again, in that whole area also, there was practically no one. So that journey continued. And then in the last 5 years, especially 2015-16, when the air pollution, kind of skyrocketed, that's when I again got more active in that specific area, which was my MD thesis area. And I also, like Amilji, was involved in activism. We did a small neighborhood experiment in which we used to have an air quality monitor that I used to have in my balcony. And every morning I used to take the air quality readings, and then through WhatsApp, send it to our morning walkers group. And eventually we kind of calibrated and kind of figured out, what levels are okay to go out for a walk, what levels one should not go, what should one do in between, and so on. And it was something which was very well appreciated. It was picked up by the media, the newspaper. There was a video made on it by Al Jazeera. BBC covered it, and that was it. So we just continued with that work, and that was about that aspect. It was just something we did. A couple of talks I gave, but in 2019, I was really honored, delighted that my own university, Johns Hopkins University, in their wisdom, awarded, I received a Community Hero Award from the Johns Hopkins University. So that was the activism part, but we also did some science along the way. And this included 2 projects with the Central Road Research Institute, one on how the first-time users of the metro, the commuters, how they benefited in terms of air quality, and also in terms of physical activity, and the second project on how traffic impacts the health of school children. The results of that we are in the process of assessing. So that's about the research, the activism dimension. We also serve as a Center of Excellence for Vulnerability Assessment for the National Program for Climate Change and Human Health. There are some 16 institutes associated with that. And the national program also includes air pollution besides climate change. So that is about me and the work we do. Now to very briefly take you through, how we as epidemiologists always look at problems. So in descriptive epidemiology, we say we have 6 honest men, right? So the why, when, where, who, what, and how, right? So, and just I would like to touch upon 6 aspects, how I look at it in terms of answering these 6 questions, some of which has been covered, but it's important to again dwell on it. So I'll go first to the health aspects, which is my area, but it's all interconnected. So I will, even though I'm a health scientist per se, but since we work in the environment field, I will still just mention what I feel is the way to go about the air quality puzzle. So when we say who is affected, we say, of course, children, elderly, pregnant women, those with comorbid conditions, those outdoors, like traffic policemen. But particularly pregnant women, I think that is one category we miss in our thinking. There is worldwide evidence that there is a reduction in birth weight as a result of air pollution. We still don't know what is the implication in India, but with the high levels of pollution, this is certainly a matter which we really need more evidence, and it would have nutritional consequences. But immaterial of the evidence, I think pregnant women obviously need to take extra care, at such times. I've had a lot of, husbands to-be fathers, asking me, should we take our wife to, less polluted, and to their home or whatever in the village, or smaller town. So yeah, that is a concern. Then the other point is, why we should be concerned, which is that this is exactly where I will, agree fully with Amit ji, that we just have too much focus on the lungs, whereas actually it is the heart which has been shown to have a tremendous impact. I mean, air quality really impacts the heart, and that is something we are just not even recognizing as a phenomena, definitely. And more than that, I think, I won't say more, but at least as of now, I can say that the brain aspect has been totally overlooked. We are not considering the more than 200 studies that we have worldwide, which are clearly telling us that IQ is affected in children, that it affects Alzheimer's in adults, in the elderly, and depression could be one of the impacts in both, and there could be several other impacts. It definitely goes past the blood-brain barrier. PM 2.5 or lesser size particles can enter the brain and cause structural damage. This is something which is so worrying, and I don't understand how we don't have enough pressure or enough momentum on this aspect. On something that is affecting our brain is not something that should be taken lying down. So we are having a generation who have brains which are the brain which is being affected, which is a very, very critical matter. Then the other aspect is where we should be acting. This is here now. I'll like to say that we always think of high AQI, which is all very well, but if it's with high AQI, there is a parabolic relationship between health and the outcome. So you have adverse impacts at a higher level, but that they plateau out. And therefore, if you have beneficial effects at a lower level, then you actually get overall more benefit from the health perspective. So effectively, that what it means is if you're moving from 400 to 350 and 200 to 150, when all other things, including population density, etc., are the same, it is the 200 to 150 where you will get more health benefits rather than 400 to 350. So that's something that needs to be considered. Our towns and cities where pollution is now rising, we shouldn't overlook that. We should be ready with our plans there. The other part is when we should be moving out. I think that is known, like mostly in the 10 to 4 sort of time in the winter. So we need to modify that part. I think is fairly clear. But from all of society and the air quality perspective, I think that message that we have to act all around the year and not just in winters, like sir was also mentioning, that is very, very critical, because unless you lower baseline in summers, you will not be able to lower the baseline in winters, and therefore not make the impact that you need, and you will have this winter phenomena endlessly. So we are already into our 6th year, which is something which is now become an international shame, so we know that, and the way it's affecting business, as Amitji also rightly pointed out, these are very important considerations. Then, so just 2 more points and I'll end here. So one is this whole issue of crop burning. That's what I will call as the what aspect in the way I view it. So what can we do, and with crop burning being such an essential issue, which I'm mentioning, there are others, such as, of course, vehicles and road dust, etc., industries, power plants. But I'll just get to that. the main point about crop burning is that, it has these economic consequences, these medical consequences, say on Delhi, for example. Now, you could compute that, and if there was a way in which that money could be transferred to Punjab, Haryana, wherever, right? And you actually ensure that the crop is picked up and converted to energy. I know it's a simplistic what I'm saying, but what I'm trying to mention is that if there is interstate cooperation and including monetary aid, then this problem can be solved. And once it is solved, if the crop residue issue is solved, it's something which is going to take away a huge expenditure, medical expenditure, which comes in every year. And not only suffering, but also deaths, which we don't even have the exact numbers. And the other issue that is there in the whole emissions game, so to say, is that there is a very idealistic sort of notion, which I've even heard from very prominent air quality scientists, that we should address every source of emission. Now that is just not feasible, not needed. It goes against Pareto principle. You should just go on the most important components, most important sources. So that's here in Delhi, it would be, say, vehicles and dust, road dust, or other sources, industries and power plants. That's it. If you just do this, you would have solved Delhi's air quality problem. Don't look at anything else. But unfortunately, it's like going after every source and not getting anything done. So this is what I have to say. This is the how part, how the whole problem should be solved. And so those are the 6 issues. Sorry, I've exceeded a little bit, but I thought I will try to cover whatever possible. It's a subject that I'm very passionate about, having been involved since year 2000.
Thank you, sir. It was really enriching session, and we get to know a lot about the air pollution. So we will be taking now the question answer session. So the first question is from Commander Gaurav Sharma. He is asking why Indian limits for air pollution are higher than WHO limits, and why are we not revising the standards to make them stricter?
Okay, should I answer that?
Yes, Doctor.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you see, so part of the reason for that is that the evidence, the levels are thought through by the epidemiological evidence. Now, when these limits came out, most of the evidence was almost all the evidence was through because of the respiratory aspect, cardiovascular, neurological, and all that. Now there are some studies coming in, but at that time, when these levels were thought out, were announced, at that time, the evidence was basically the respiratory related. Now, what happens for respiratory, at least in the case of asthma, which is a major health outcome of concern, in asthma, you will in India, what is going to happen naturally is that there is something called the hygiene hypothesis, which means basically that specifically for asthma, not for other respiratory conditions, but it means that if because of early life exposure, what you have the gut, which is stimulated, and Dr. Devleena can chime in on this. So because the gut is stimulated, therefore the lung is in some way protected. And so, you have a situation where you do not have asthma prevalence so high. You can imagine yourself in countries like Australia and New Zealand, asthma prevalence can be as high, asthma prevalence is as high as 20%. Whereas in India, even going by the estimates, if you look at overall estimates, it's about 10% for adolescents, which is the highest prevalence in the lifespan. So that the reason for this protection is thought to be due to the hygiene hypothesis. That is why you do not have this, what we call as a dose response relationship. We do not have the same sort of dose response relationship for Indian population with respect to the asthma component. So that is how you have this whole issue that, you know, your levels are set at the level which one would see is relaxed, but that is all being revised because of the impact on cardiovascular and neurological systems.
So thank you, sir. So next question we will be taking is from Amit Agarwal. If bad air is weakening our lungs and affecting our health by lowering our immunity, why we didn't see more mortality rate in Delhi NCR with respect to other Indian cities? So I think Dr. Nitish, you can answer.
Now that, you see, is a difficult question to answer, but one thing is there that, you know, time activity patterns are also very important. So how much time you are spending outdoors, how much indoors, and also to what extent you are protected beyond the natural protection of a indoor environment. There's you may have any number of you know, interventions nowadays, like the air purifiers and whatever other means you're using, air conditioning, etc. So it's difficult to say you know, why particular cities are getting more affected. Biomass has come down very heavily, right?
So the next question is for everyone. So there is it is a question on monitoring. Yes, that says that whatever can be measured can be improved. Do the panelists believe if we can bring the cost of monitoring devices, citizens will become more sensitive to pollution topics? So do the panelists believe that we can bring the cost of monitoring devices?
I think I do believe that certainly bringing down because right now the real understanding of PM 2.5, but more of awareness related to that, even having a door open through I mean, gaps of the door, the way the air being diffused, at least people will try to will understand how this diffusion happens, what indoor quality changes once you open the door. Just by having a filter over there, air purifier over there, is not going to clean the air of the whole house. And so monitoring device is certainly going to help and bring the better awareness how air pollution behaves. So I truly believe that having air monitoring devices even at the household level will be helpful, bringing a more awareness and more action in the people's mindset.
Okay, sir. So I'm requesting everyone to write your questions out there in the chat box so that we can take up the questions. So there is one more question pertaining to the sustainable and integrated solutions for waste management. So Dr. Sunil, can you enlighten me on this thing? So what are the ways we can go for sustainable and integrated solutions for plastic problems that we are having?
It is a very good question. And now the plastics, the generation of plastic is so much. But many governments, even international and national organizations, have initiated a lot of efforts to utilize the plastic waste generation. And they are in the process of devising mechanism. Even circular economic model are being adopted by many of the stakeholders, even Central Pollution Control Board, MOEF, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Lot of efforts are being, even World Bank is in the picture, and many of the international firms are also doing a lot of things to develop circular economic model for the plastic waste management. So I think in coming 2-3 years, many things are going to happen in plastic waste management sector.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us. So I have one question pertaining to this. So I just wanted to ask, sir, to everyone that we have seen this air pollution is being created by the crop rubbles that is there. So smog that we say, that smoke and the fog that is creating all the problems. So how means what are the ways we can curb these problems? Any solutions for these problems? Because that is also part of waste management, that the crop rebels are there, and how we can come up with any solutions is there for this thing. So any solutions pertaining to the crop rebels that is there in Haryana and that is causing the problems in the air quality index in Delhi?
I mean, the way I look at that is, so we have to look at 2 to 3 patterns of solving the problem. Because when we talk about these crop residuals, so I mean, that is at least going to take 5 to 10 years, even if we go all out of solving this, because what even the formula we brought out, that has to be taken away. So we see that there has to be like biodiesel. These are the critical answer where they can monetize on this crop residual can be helpful, at least addressing the pollution at a source level. But we have to keep in mind that we have to also look at the alternate ways so that the city is ready to combat the air pollution at immediate level also. So we have to look at the different channels of making sure that air quality should be as clean as delivering to the kids, so that their next future is not being compromised. Because we just saw, I mean, a month before, it was a very consistent things. Even if of my friends, small kids, my daughter, they all had vomiting. They all gone through all this, and one of my friend daughter get into the ICU even. So I see this is a challenge which every family must own if they really love their kid. So, and we look at various aspects of combating the air pollution on the immediate front also, and on the source level also, because source level is the only powerful answer which as a society we must build up to.
So the next question is from Sachin. So he is asking that, can removing pollution be a business model? So it is for everyone. Can removing pollution be a business model?
I think absolutely it should be. And the way the carbon credit and all these systems, they are trying to bring it in for climate change, the kind of goals they have set it up. So we also should look at the air pollution also in form of business model, so that there is a gearing up from various stakeholders into it to address the challenge. And I think that's a beautiful idea, and it should be looked into.
See, Deblina, as I said in my, when I was sharing my thoughts, we are not for profit company actually. And we have our sustainable business model. When we clean the rivers, we create value out of it. And that is, the money comes back to the project. And as I said, the most of the project, they collapse because the moment you stop, putting money into it, they collapse. So it has to be self-sustainable model to create a longer impact on the whatever initiative you have, whether it's on river or air or whatever. So there is no harm in creating some business model for the pollution. I completely agree with this.
I think I would like to add a point that because right now there is no correlation being set it up, right, that the pollution, the kind of damage it is doing at the health, the damage it is doing at the economy level, it is the government and the policymaker has to understand that if that pollution is being removed, I think so the recovery in the economy, the better economic growth will happen, the health outcome will be better. I think so the correlation of that has to be done at a policy level, so that there is a clear motivation why this pollution should be removed, because we are getting much bigger benefit by removing the pollution in the form of a business model. So that that relation has to be done at a policy level, and this can bring out that every stakeholder will try to put an effort, a genuine effort, because there is a business related to it, to remove the pollution so that other losses can be reduced.
Develina, it has got socio-economic impact because we create awareness in the society so that they understand what are the challenges and what is the ill effect of poor waste management. Then we give them livelihood. We incentivize the people so that they get encouraged to understand the problem actually. And when you incentivize the problem, people opt for the solutions actually.
Yes, sir. So any more, sir? Dr. Nitish, Dr. Sunil, if you have anything that whether we can take this as a business model or not?
No, I I don't have thoughts precisely on that, but I wonder why the government doesn't has stopped, the Delhi government has stopped the subsidy on electric vehicles. I thought this would be feeding into a business model also, but anyhow, so maybe I think their logic is that they would only give it to the scooters, two-wheelers, not to the four-wheelers.
So we have one more questions. So heard it is from Jitin Handa. He is saying that heard a few years back that as PM 2.5/10 particles lodge in human lungs, it is practically irreversible. What are your thoughts?
So what I can say on this is that, to an extent, the parallel is cigarette smoking, right? So so if you have continuous exposure, obviously you will have problems. But when, for example, when people quit smoking, right? So the blood vessels, the lung functions, all of that, they do come back. I would not say to absolute normal, that may not happen, but there would be a reversal. So the reversal is possible. There's a whole book by Dean Ornish called The Reversal of Heart Disease, right? So if you can have cigarette smoke and lipids and all of that that can be reversed, then it just stands to reason that same way it would be with particulates. But yes, definitely, I mean, if you're going to have continuous exposures, you're not going to have the situation improve, then definitely a loss of life is what you're going to see. I mean, that is also a reality. And there are various debates, like the Chicago puts out the figures of 10 years for Delhi. The various ICMR estimates are to the range of 1.5 years or so, if I remember. So there's a huge variation, but at the end of the day, you would end up losing a few years, and due to this factor. So definitely it's enough reason, and as I said, not only the life, then those potentially irreversible damages, but also the damages on the brain and other organ systems. That is very relevant.
So thank you, sir. So he has also shared a link pertaining to this.
Very good. That's great.
Yeah. So Dr. Sunil Kumar has also said that 10,000 crores has been envisaged for solid waste related business as of now. So with this, we will be going forward with our sessions, and I would request Sachin to means a vote of thanks session. So Sachin is Director Operations for Innovation Curious Private Limited. So welcome, Sachin.
Thanks, Dr. Deblina, and thanks everyone for your wonderful contributions. So I could not thank you enough, and it's always a pleasure meeting some of you, although virtually right now. And I think the context that has been set up from a research perspective is excellent by Dr. Sunil Kumar, Dr. Nitish, Dr. Deblina. And also we have doers like Yash and Amit, and we have known Amit now for a long time as an innovator, and he has jumped from diagnostics to solve the pollution problem. I think we need more and more people who are doing this. And I think what Amit has said, I think it kind of resonates a lot with me, that it's not a technical problem, it's also kind of people have to ask for it. And unfortunately in India we don't ask for healthcare, or we don't demand, and it doesn't become like a political issue. So I think I feel quite good that we are doing this discussion, but this discussion should happen more often. So maybe we need active contributions from all of you, and we as Innovation Curious are grateful for making this happen. I'm also grateful to Dr. Deblina for kind of putting this together, for making this effort happen. But in my own personal life, I have seen that I was sharing this with some others as well, that 5 years back, I was doing a lot of investigations in our own office, buying equipment. And I realized that unless you don't see it yourself, change doesn't come. And I was in a panel with Kamal Mittal once after watching his TED talk. So I asked him, sir, can I visit your office? And he took me to his place in Nehru Place. And he put a SO2 meter, saturated oxygen device on my finger. And he said, if you stay in my office for 4 hours, your oxygen levels will improve. And his business model of selling real estate or giving his office for rent is that you will have air as good as Himalayas, if you are in the Nehru Place office of Kamal Mittal. So I was so amazed that people can actually, create, removing pollution as a USP. So I don't know if you guys have met Kamal Mittal. He's based in Delhi and he runs this Paharpur Business Park. So I think what Amit mentioned about, putting some numbers together is very important to create sensitivity. I remember also one statistics few years back that in Bangalore, they said that the traffic jams of Bangalore create a productivity loss of $2 billion. So I don't know if COVID kind of made Bangalore more productive, but I think we need definitely a holistic understanding. There is lots of understanding already shared by the experts today, which is focusing on their own topic. But I think we definitely need an effort where researchers like Dr. Deblina or Professor Nitish or others have to probably, come together and, make it a comprehensive understanding and make it actionable. And I think support, entrepreneurs like Amit and Yash, so that the solution are available to the, the regular citizens, and maybe we can improve the quality of life. So that's it from me, Dr. Deblina. Again, grateful to all of you for your contributions today. And we hope that we can take it forward and make it much more, hands-on in coming months or years. Thank you.
And I would like to request that everyone should go and visit our swasthram.com. I did put up in the chat, and look at the Shudhvayu filter to make their own car as an air purifier, to at least send a message that how we can make things possible on ground.
Yeah, thank you, Amit. Thanks again, and I hope we can continue with your support such discussions in future. So with that, I think we can now end the session. Thanks everyone again.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you, Dr. Saab. Thanks, co-panelists, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.